Hi there and welcome back to Japan, where I'm going to do my final conclusion for the review of the album SaiSai, the debut album from Silent Siren. In fact, before they were even a signed group, they were signed to an independent record label. Now, instantly I should just point out, just in case you're wondering, today is that same day that I'm not feeling particularly well. I know I record these videos on different days and upload them and not always in chronological sequence, but apologies if I'm looking a little bit... Don't worry, I'll get there. But it's been a long time since I did the track-by-track review of this album, in fact, and just with all the things that have been coming up, I haven't had a chance to do a conclusion of it, and yet I have been listening to it quite regularly, which is one of the things I really wanted to bring up, because that's kind of the interesting thing about this. I know it's what I think is really referred to as a mini-album. I would say it's more of an album EP, somewhere in between, 7 tracks long, but this is actually a really interesting one because it's surprisingly entertaining. I went into this first of all with a little bit of a mixed approach. I didn't really know how to approach it because of the fact that I was so used to their modern sound. I'd started listening to them really from their later work and was working back from that point. And this is a group who, they've got a very sort of sheened pop sound. It's part of what they do. They, sort of accepting of production. They're playful with different sort of voices and things. It's a rock band, but they don't lean so much into the rock. They have the guitars, they have all that kind of thing, but they kind of present more of a poppy approach. So I was interested to know how this was going to sound, whether it was going to be a little bit more garagey and whether we were going to be hearing them sort of working up from the more independent sound or not. And in actuality, it sounded very sheened off the bat. And the other thing as well is that this album, along with their second and last independent album, which we'll be reviewing track by track next, were both obviously with a different keyboard player. And as you guys know, hashtag no bias, I kind of like the new keyboard player. So there was a lot of things that I wanted to get my head around with this. Now, the thing that perhaps surprises me most of all is how it doesn't sound that distinctly different on the surface from what they're doing now. In fact, they really hit the ground running. It seems that their entire identity as a band has been a pretty sure-shot thing from the beginning, and I did a little bit of reading and research in the time between doing a track-by-track and now, because I'd already knew a few things about the band, but I wanted to find out more. And it does seem that, although they met through a modelling agency where they were working at the time, I think it was the drummer and the singer, they were both working at modelling agents and they met through there. In actuality, it does seem that they came together in a relatively organic way, actually. So it is surprising that they hit the ground running so much. And in regards to the independent record label that this is released on, does it even show the name of them on here? Very small. It was a company called Brand New Music. But anyway, Brand New Music, just to give you a little bit of context, was a record company that I decided to look up. I was interested to know what Brand New Music basically are doing now. And having found their YouTube page, it was relatively active at the time of Silent Siren. And then after them, it became less active. There was like 2 or 3 artists. And then it seemed to have been pretty much ground to a halt about I think it was about half a year ago. And the only real videos they'd had in the last year was just seemingly like a bedroom acoustic session being recorded by one artist who, for all I know, she actually could have been the owner of the label. So it really looked like it was a real sort of bedroom operation, a homemade thing. And having a look at some of the videos that came from this album and from their unsigned period, it does seem that they're filmed in a way where, get a room, put people in there, get some lighting, film it, sort of thing, which, it's done well, but effectively could be done on virtually no budget. Enough people could get together and get that money to do that kind of video quite easy, I'd imagine. So this is something where I would say that it really is a no-budget album, probably in any important way. It's compared to a big record company album, and yet it sounds very well produced. So clearly, they knew the sound they wanted to go for, and they landed on their feet with it, and they got, a really good start. So when it comes to this album, is it any different? Is it just basically in canon and as good as listening to their new stuff? Yes and no. Now, first thing I'd like to point out, I nearly picked up the wrong album there. First thing I'd really like to point out is after listening to this album several times through, it's the first 2 tracks that really hit me, and I can't say that enough. Now, Lingerie, as the very first track, is actually a really good single, and it's grown on me. It's very simple, but it's very playful. The verses with the little beep, 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 beep sort of synth thing going on. The chorus, which is your sort of general rock and roll thing, but it's a really well written chorus. The way that it builds up in the pre-chorus, it's got a fun little sing-along bridge that isn't really anything to write home about, but it works fantastically. Just the whole song is a very, very good pop single, and I imagine that if they had more of a budget, that single would probably be much better known. And we could see in the video when we did the review of that, it is, it's a fun video, and there's a lot of bravery in it, but it is very low budget again. So once again, the signs that this was a much more low budget release were all there, although the ambitions of being something very poppy and well produced were clearly there as well. Now, like I say, I think that was a fantastic single, and that would have been a really good breakout if it had the necessary backing. As anyone knows, the money that you put into a single is probably even more important than how good the actual single is. I assure you there are millions of classic songs that would just be memorable forever that have probably been recorded by bedroom artists, put onto the internet or archived somewhere, and just never been given the money or light of day to get through to the audience who would have bought them. It's a simple truth. And so when you listen to something like this, you can hear it and say, if that was coming out now with the right backing, that would be a great debut single. But moving on from that, the second track as well then demonstrates that they can do something which is kind of like a slightly, not as light as a ballad, but it's, you know, quite a powerful sort of poppy ballad. And it's fantastic. It's a really great follow-up. So in the first two tracks, they demonstrate a real aptitude for doing two very different things, but, you know, based around pop, but a more sort of energetic, lively pop song as a band, and a more ballady song that could almost be a solo single one, but you do hear that obviously the quality of the band coming through. They have those two songs at the beginning, and you just think, wow, this is such a powerful start. And the more I listen to it, the more it really engaged with me that those two songs are fantastic and would make great singles. And, you know, just a shame that they weren't released with more backing. But, you know, as a debut, I think that's probably part of what solidified them. Now, after that point, the rest of the album is pretty good. And I should point out, just before I move on, actually, the credit where it's due, I wasn't impressed with everything that the keyboard player did in this album. I did point out one or two songs where I thought she maybe could have done something more interesting, but on those first two songs as well, she did very different things. Synthesizer on the first one, more piano on the second one, and she really helped those a lot. So credit where it is due. Now, the rest of the album is basically good, but it kind of, for the best part, plays around similar tones to what happens at the beginning of the album, and never quite as effective. I would say that the thing I noticed, and I do point this out, is when I do these track-by-track listens, afterwards when I do the conclusion, I give myself several times to listen to it. Sometimes listening specifically, just sitting down and listening. Sometimes having it on the background while I'm going for a walk, doing my shopping, doing anything, just to see either which songs stand out when you really pay attention and which songs grab you when you're not paying attention. You know, the ones that just, you know, really grab you because they're that good. After the first two tracks, I've got to be honest, nothing really grabbed me unless I was paying attention to it. The other songs are good. There's no real bad songs on this album. There's nothing where it felt like it was a real skipper or, you know, just wasn't good. But I think after those two songs, nothing really wowed me as much anymore. And that, I think, is where we kind of get the real flavour of what this album kind of is, in that it's strong, it's got some real promise, but it does feel a little bit like that they didn't quite get the whole bite of, you know, really knowing how to inject their sort of brand of authenticity and, you know, emotional authenticity and accessible fun into every single song. Some of the other songs sounded a little bit like they were still finding their feet and, you know, didn't quite have the wow factor. Now I know, before you say it, that yes, they do use writers for their songs. I know they have some input in their songs as well, but still it has to be said that, you know, when it's a band like this who they play their instruments, and they're very talented musicians, when they pick up the song, they are going to naturally have an input. Even if they're not really writing, they're going to be able to pick and choose what they want to a certain degree. And, you know, like I say, this album, after those first two tracks, kind of faded into the background for me. If I was paying attention to it, it's rewarding. It's got enough interesting things in there. But if I was listening to it casually, it never really grabbed me after those first two tracks. And that does include, strangely enough, the very last track, All Right, which is, incidentally, that's a single that they still play now. And it's one that on the new sort of mini EP extended single thing they're releasing, Hero, on the B-side of that is actually a live version of All Right, showing that they clearly still, you know, they still want this song after changing record companies twice since and sort of elevating. They still really look back on it with a lot of fondness. I must admit, I don't think it's that great. I mean, like I say, it kind of fits in with all the other songs on the album after the first two are done. Yeah, those last 5 songs are all good. You know, they're good, but I wouldn't say it's amongst their best pieces of material. And considering that seems to be the heralded single of this album, I don't really think it stands out in any way as much as certainly those first two tracks, which really do stand out. And yes, I think anything that's done on this album they've done something similar but better later in their career. So, all in all, let's have a look at it from the different perspectives we can view it. as a first album, if I was hearing this as the first album from a band, yes, I would be really excited about the promise that's coming for this group. I'd be like, wow, this is a good first step. I really can't wait to see what happens next, which instantly I can't wait to see what happens next, and we're going to be finding out what happens next together on the next track-by-track listen through. But I would be really excited about that. So in the context of being a first album, it's great. In the context of my expectations of someone looking back from the new them to the older them, in a way, yes, I guess I do feel a little bit sad that I didn't get to hear anything quite so garagey and homemade as maybe I could have hoped for. But, you know, I mean, let's face it, these girls are already working in the media industry. They probably knew how to get hold of the right stuff and probably had the money and the right connections already by the time they started doing this. And, you know, they got an independent record label. I mean, it wasn't just totally independent, but still, it was interesting listening back that, okay, maybe I feel a little bit disappointed that I don't get to hear them quite in that much rawness, but still, I am impressed at just how well this was done and how much it is almost competitive in quality of production with their newer stuff. A little bit more basic, but really does have a lot of that understanding of the sound they're going for, and they really did hit that sound running. So listening back to it now, it does make for a good, interesting listen, although, like I said, finding their feet and less engaging than newer stuff. Overall, if I was directly to say, is this an album I'd recommend to buy? If you're a fan, yes. If you're a fan of them, then I think this is well worth buying. Their independent albums have kind of disappeared somewhat. I noticed that when I uploaded these videos, usually when you do track by tracks, you get a little copyright notice next to each one just saying, yeah, the artist is claiming this, and usually they don't block them, they just say, hey, so, you know, the artist is claiming this, don't make any money off of it. Interestingly, on this, I didn't get that on any of them except for that last single, All Right, which I actually got full on blocked for. I believe it's connected to like a theme tune or something. So it was probably, there's more hands on the copyright of that probably than just one group, and especially after they changed record companies a couple of times. But as a general, it seems that the copyright of this album is completely forgotten. The album itself is pretty much completely forgotten. You can find it on Google, but, you know, there's only some second-hand copies bounding around here and there. It's not very easy to get about, and there's not very easy to get, and there's not that much written about it online. So, you know, it's not something that's readily available, but if you saw it and you were a fan, yes, I'd say get it. It's a good addition. It certainly isn't a letdown. But realistically, if you have the choice of buying this or their newer stuff, I'd say buy their newer stuff, just because obviously they have found their feet more now. They have better nailed all those different parts of their range. They've played around more with the sound that they have. However, I would say that if you were buying this, the main thing I'd recommend, those first two tracks. The first two tracks are absolutely fantastic. The rest of the album is good, but the first two tracks are worth hunting out. Even if you don't particularly want to buy the album and spend out the money for however much it costs secondhand, you can get it cheap in a secondhand shop if you find it here in the CD shops. But buying it online, you might have to pay a pretty penny for that. However, if you can like download it or just listen to the first two tracks at very least, I would recommend that. And obviously, you can check out my track by track view if you want to have a little listen and see what they like before buying them yourself. So, in my opinion, yeah, like I said, well, I kind of covered all my opinions there, but I do think this is a much stronger start than we could have expected. So I got a lot of interest when it comes into this second album. This is the last one with their keyboard, the original keyboard player, the last one on independent record label before moving over to Dream Music, which is a proper record label, you know, subsidiary of a bigger record label, I believe, and now they're on EMI. But this was their last independent record label album. I'm interested to see, did this elevate them in a way that got them to the point of, you know, being signed? Or considering this came out, you know, sort of about half a year before their first signed album, which obviously therefore includes a change of members and a change of record company, was this just something that went under the radar in that changeover process and perhaps wasn't really the reason they got signed so much as something that they thought was going to be their next step before quickly it got replaced? I'd be very interested to know, and I'm looking forward to listening to that with you guys. We'll do a track by track as usual. I'm assuming the copyright situation is going to be the same on that, and we can listen to it all together. But for now, from Japan, I just want to say thank you very much for checking, and thank you if you've been waiting for this album conclusion. I know it's been a little bit of a time, but often with the album conclusions for last videos in these track by track playlists, I take a little bit longer to get to them. Anyway, as we've just finished, we're just finishing up, depending on when I release this video, we're just finishing up listening to Scandal's Best Scandal album. I'm planning to do the track by tracks of the Silent Siren and different Scandal albums, kind of one after the other to break between them, so it should not be long before we get into this little piece of interest. But thank you so much for listening to this little piece of interest with me, and it's been really great enjoying it with you. Like I say, leave your comments and thoughts below. Tell me if you've got a copy of the album, tell me if you want a copy of the album, tell me what you think of the album overall, and just, give me any information you think is worth sharing, because it's always great to have a discussion on this. But for now, from Japan, thank you so much for tuning in once again, and ciao ciao. Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out more of our hundreds of videos we got online on this channel right now, or get involved in the discussion with us at the many social media links we've got in the description below, where you can suggest new videos and artists for us to check out on the channel. Or you can just do the usual YouTube stuff and comment, like, subscribe. You know how this works by now.